Back from the break, we hope you've been enjoying your time here with us because this is week 5, the final week, and of course the most important, as all these competitors are playing for $10,000 throughout today, but there is a special game number 9 for our winning house. Of course, for right now, the Drakes do seem to be in progress of making their way towards that final game, though. We stay here for game number 1 of 8 today. Lucky, it's a marathon to start, right? But what are you looking forward to most as we get into the action?
You know what? I think I'm getting a little bit more excited about these end games, right? I think players are starting to get a little bit more comfortable on the map. I've seen a lot of them playing offline, not even during the tournaments and stuff like that. So when players get a little bit more knowledgeable on the map, the end games are going to play a lot more strategic. Players are going to have rotation a little bit more. People are going to realize, you know what? Maybe high ground going 6th, 7th zone isn't the job or isn't the right plan to do, because when we're jumping off and got 5 teams looking at us, we're just going to get absolutely obliterated. So I think the end games are going to be a lot more interesting than what we've seen compared to week 1 and 2. Where it's just kind of ending rather quickly with just 2 teams. But I mean, we'll see how it all pans out. We see Joe over here across the map, the castle, or out of zone.
We had some conversations briefly before today's show kicked off about maybe what the meta might look like, just whether the Chronon's going to come back into effect today. Of course, the Lockman always being kind of a go-to. What is it like when weapons change, whether in the middle of a tournament or just kind of sparingly as an event kicks off? What is the kind of the mentality for pros understanding that, all right, we're going to have to change up either what we use, or do they feel rather comfortable just switching to a different AR, to a different sub? What do you think the talk is like between them?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you might have one member on your squad try to switch it up and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think consistently 2 out of 3 players will just use what they're more, I guess, comfortable with.
Sure.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, Warzone doesn't have, you know, as much of a difference in meta loadouts at the moment right now.
Sure.
So it's not like you're going to be rocking around like you're at a huge disadvantage going from ISO to MP5. Huge disadvantage going from Chrono to Castle. So if you feel a little bit more comfortable, regardless of what weapon you're using, that's kind of what you're shooting for. You don't need to go down to the specific stats of like, oh, this one has 0.5 more damage, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's again, it comes down to kind of limiting the variance, especially when you get into this spot for a lot of our competitors. This is, of course, the last week here of our Vondel battles. This is week 5 if you're just joining us. You missed 4 weeks of action. Go back and watch what you've missed. But as we start off today, a couple of things to note as well. We've had some roster changes, nothing too forward-facing like what we had in week 4, where everybody was making a change. Zyro will be out, of course, having a sub in for King AJ and Louis CM when we jump down the list. Ken's Rosie still out. Wars staying in position like he was last week. That squad did find success back in game 7 with the game 1 victory. But looking kind of, again, down the list, you have Clutch Belk, who will be out this week. Envy will be filling in for Destroy and zlaner. So not the same amount of variance that we had last week, but notable names still missing. Again, we will have subs in for them to start, though. Solidify will move in on 1 position. We already see some gunfights happening early on here as this game 1 kicks off, but we still wait for around zone 2 or 3 to really lock in before things start to get a little hectic.
Yeah, you know what, Spaceman, you'll just start to see like that 1 pick, okay, back it up, reset, 1 pick, back it up, reset. You're just kind of like battling the teams around you. No one's really full sending. Because for the people at home, if you don't know, as soon as your whole squad is eliminated, kind of similar to what we're seeing right now with Diaz, Shifty, and Sage, if all 3 players drop, you are out for the count. There's no gulag. You're not going to gulag. You're not trying to play 50-50. That is it. So when 1 player drops, you kind of want to back it up. Exactly what we're seeing out of Sage. He's going to go ahead and disengage. If Diaz dies, it's all good because Shifty's back up. So you're going to start to see those types of fights. But once the resurgence timer closes, a lot more, you know, pushing things together as a squad, pushing, clearing teams out, you know, committing to the fights a little bit more rather than just jabbing back and forth.
Yeah, it's of course your number 1 team in the tournament so far. Sage last week was really the standout for the squad. When we jumped on to POVs with Biffle and company, we were looking at 6-7 eliminations by around zone 2 just for Biffle alone, but Sage consistently in team fights was winning 2-3 at a time, and it kept them involved, at least in the point differential. Then when the multiplier kicked in as they made the run late in the tournament, that's where we saw the ground really getting made up. This team was just ridiculous in late game situations. Expect Sage to be a consistent factor again today. So far the AR has been good at range. You have a couple of numbers else pushed out, extra numbers tagged, information available, and resources as well. But in situations like this trio is so deadly. They can collapse on a team in a matter of moments.
I believe in week 3, we had all 4 of them in top 3 eliminations. Excuse me.
Yeah.
They were in the top 4, 3 of them, for the most eliminations in the entire match. So it's kind of insane to think about. But they're not just dominating in the placement category, but also the kill category as well.
Nice. And you can hear him calling out as well, like they got the marker, so they already are able to split up a couple of teams. And again, it's kind of this pinch and rotate. Stack as a team when you have the engagement available, but allow someone like Biffle to rotate out, take a gunfight where he feels comfortable, and then peel back your numbers. Really like their approach so far.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
Yeah, it's looking good. They also send Diaz in there into the fight. Sage watches back here. And also, take a look at Sage's gun. This is the Lockman 762 battle rifle, I believe. You switch this thing to full auto, and, you know, you might see this weapon hit harder than the Cronin. I've used it before in game. It's got a bit of recoil to it, but when you're at the skill level of Sage, you're able to control that. I mean, it could be deadly in the hands of a player like Sage.
And this is the changeup we were maybe expecting to see today, because again, a player like Sage, a lot of the ARs last week were running the Cronin. Will we see the Lockman switch up so far? The answer is yes, just by the sample size of this game alone. It has been a difference maker, able to find at least 3 eliminations to his name, still working on the 4th. As Biffle will be hunted. We got 30 seconds to burn here. Not too worried about the push from the back. Great shots will help. And Sage on the 180 punishes into the water.
Just like that, straight for the elimination. I think that was his bounty too, so they're going to get rewarded a bit for that. Sage going to go ahead and try to back it up here as Diaz goes down. Shifty, I think, is working recovery, so they're not in a position to continue this fight. Notice they're going to back it up, reset it, maybe take control towards PD, and you'll start to see teams, you know, start slowing down zone 3, possibly pushing 4. They'll start posting up because that's the time, around the time, at least Resurgence will go ahead and get disabled. So you want to make sure you're in a good position for that, because if you're still pushing teams with 30 seconds left and things go south, well, now you're working to regain, even if that you're still alive.
That's a really good point, because we saw a lot during weeks 3 and 4, and kind of cleaned up last week, but teams were struggling to not only play the ground game on rotation, but they were struggling to get set up late zone. And I think that's a problem for a lot of our trios, where just prioritizing when to rotate, when to take the gunfights, that balance is a very dangerous line to walk. They've cleaned it up in week 5. So far in week 6, we will see how things go. Excuse me, in week 4 they cleaned up. Week 5 we will see how things go. But as it stands currently, it's essentially been what we saw last week with, again, a lot of risky challenges from some of our top teams. Trying to keep one number alive is all that it takes. And so far, they are successful. 2 shots from Wars and good enough for the cleanup. This was a squad that, again, took home that Game 7 victory royale last week. And really, it was the sub-in from Wars that made the difference. So far, doing the same here.
Yeah, Wars is a phenomenal player, has experience under his belt, and another one of the Slayers on the team is going to be Krings. Krings actually was one of the only players to break the top 3 in the kill department when it came down to, I think, week 3. So he was, I think, in 2nd place, just under Diaz, or 3rd place, but one of the only players to crack that open, and I think their team wasn't even, I think they were 3rd or 4th. Pretty impressive gameplay coming in from Krings. That's kind of the balance you want to see, right, Spaceman, with your squad. It's like, you don't want everybody just to be an IGL, right? You want to have a Slayer or 2 on the squad, balance it out a little bit. Wars, with the experience he has, maybe even IGLing towards the end games here is going to be key. And then having Krings, just an absolute rampage of a player, just running around, getting elimination after elimination. Because it's just not winning the game, you know, that matters. You touched up on this in the pre-show. It's also about, you know, getting the right eliminations, right? You don't want just to win a game with 5 kills. You need about 15 pushing 20.
And we looked at TB last week where they got back-to-back victories. Of course, they were only getting like 11 eliminations per game. He had one in game 3, 11 eliminations. 17 was the most they maxed out in game 2, but they upped it to 20 in game 4. Granted, that was the most they hit during the day, but that was the big talking point, Lucky, was like, all right, they're winning multiple games, which is great for multiplier, but they weren't up until game 4 putting up 15, 20 eliminations, which was a problem. So when we see the IGL jump back in Tommy today, the roster's back to full strength. Will things change? It's about balancing the elimination department, but also using the multiplier that does help, because the elimination.
A little bit.
This is a very important week for some of our top teams to show that they can get 20 eliminations, keep that as a consistent level. But already some awkward gunfights there as Unrational finds a couple of pings, and I think that might be Mayapa who does go down. It will be, so a big player dropping early.
Yeah, this is a great squad to also take a look at. We got Scum and Gary, aka Unrational, and Knight, somebody I was mentioning in the show earlier. And these players, man, they're going to be working on the outside, working in. I think they're towards Central Station here, so they just got to look forward. One player in front of him. Scum is going to go down to Hisoka and Skullface. POV of Hisoka taking him down. A little trash talk going back and forth. You got to be careful, though, because those pings are behind him. Hisoka can't really push that high ground, so he'll back it up. And that's what you see out of a lot of these more experienced players, right? It's just like, get a kill, back it up, play disciplined. I mean, if that's me, I'm going for a kill, then just keep pushing, and that's why I'm cast and not playing, you know what I mean? But, you know, it's interesting to see Hisoka. It's not just a gun skill, man. It's the right calls you're making, just not overextending, not, you know, getting too aggro.
Yeah, there's so much more to the gunfight than just like point and shoot. It's obviously like the rotation, positioning, when to take a challenge, when not to, when to fall back, what you invest in. So far, the dividends being paid in the buy station. You get a couple of plates back in your pocket. Not a lot of money to work with for this squad, but it looks like the Cronin's still the favorable gun here for Hisoka. Again, to remind you, this team was in first place for about 2-3 hours last week until the eventual pushback and crackback we saw from Biffle and company in that last late push in game number 8. For Hisoka, though, this is a week about consistency. Just get a decent amount of eliminations. 15 to 20 will do enough. Get high placements. They have a real chance to take home the victory this week. We'll see if the adjustments have been made. But we jump back over to Attract, Smixy, and Flanked. A roster that made top 3 up until that final game number 8. And they looked excellent throughout all of week 5. They cleaned up the early game. We'll see if that continues here today.
Yeah, and just like that, you're about to see a change in pacing completely, because just like that, Resurgence is disabled. So no more lives alongside whatever you guys have. If you have money, you can buy up your teammates. If you have a flare, you can get them up. But after that, it's pretty much, you know, you got to play as if you have one life and one life only to live. They're in a bit of a decent positioning. We're going to see the zone actually pull towards the island just outside PD, and it'll most likely extend to the left on water if the zone stays that way. So expect a water fight in this zone, and if you're not equipped with a pistol, you want to avoid that water situation at all means necessary. But water strikes are coming in. Kind of an early investment on these streaks, don't you think? Wouldn't you maybe try to save them for the end game for the island plays?
Yeah, you know, you have to wonder if they're trying to at least zone with the zone to their back, not to double up on that single adjective. But when it comes to pushing players out of position, I think the only question here is, do you use the mortar strike to push this trio out of their spot? You have zone to your back. The rotation's going to be slow, but not unscathed. You will get tagged as you move out. So I think that's really the only question of the investment was, are they just trying to force a gunfight? If the answer is yes, they might get rewarded. If it's no, they're going to get trapped because they don't have a lot of room to maneuver. As we currently jump over to Shifty, and well, you got 2 players currently down. Biffle and Sage are both out of action. Shifty's now getting tagged and eliminated. Our number 1 squad places top 14 to start game 1. A rough start.
A rough start, but don't count them out just yet. FIFA, who is a phenomenal El Mazrou player, one of the best in the EU, but hasn't really make as much noise in the Vondel scene. So, you know, hopefully he can do it here. He's in a good position and so forth. They have the permanent UAV scanning going up on the right-hand side. They can continuously hit that as long as they have the eco flowing. 1 player behind FIFA can get that mark going on, but mainly they're in a position right here to clean up a lot of eliminations here. 20 seconds left on the zone close, and they're just looking at, you know, eliminating any players coming in. Gatekeeping is what we call it. 1 player on ping. And that's huge, dude. Talk about those ping space, man, because when you get a ping going, they last about 2-3 seconds after. You get the wall bangs, you get eliminations, track players.
We didn't see FIFA kill last week. He was out. So 1, it's just nice to see the player back on our screens. But 2, it does change the dichotomy of how this roster will work because they love the height advantage. They love the altitude game. We saw Huskerrs favorite for the majority of this tournament. A lot of teams started to counter that by working up the rappels, working up the backside of a lot of buildings to take out some of these top teams. But we haven't seen FIFA kill in the spot in quite some time. So it's nice to see, 1, that he's finding shots at range onto other parallel ARs like Rated. That's just a big cleanup alone. But now you know that Aydan must be somewhere as well. So that trio usually favoring the water rotation is going to become an X factor. They're going to become attention seekers as they try to rotate out. But this is a good spot to be in, right? You got zone to your back, not too worried about being pressed for the moment, though. Like, what are you thinking here, Lucky? Are you worried about rotating, or you're more focused on just cleaning up the gunfights in front of you?
I think right here they have the bridge to work with, so just try to get as many eliminations as you can. If you have a gas mask, do a gas mask play, and notice FIFA going to go back again for that UAV scan. They can continuously hit this as long as they have the cash flow, and there's no real buy station for them to hit, so of course they're going to keep cycling this. And now they got pings on left and right, so again, Spaceman, you could do a little bit of a delay play here. Clean up everyone around you first. I wouldn't really focus too much on the players in front of you because they're going to be focusing on those players around them. Focus on your left and right, because as soon as you get these eliminations, you can kind of just hold this area. He's trying to get that pick out the water. That's going to be Limax. Make that 2. Limax and Myapo. But keep in mind, everybody coming in from, you know, getting brought back, res, from flare, whatever, they're going to have a pistol, so they're almost at the advantage here, being able to sit in the water.
A lot of cash and a lot of plays, but you hear him saying in the comms, like, it's a free kill right here. We can just stay posted if we need to. Don't have to worry too much about the pings from the zone. Finally, they will move into position. They've done enough, right? Like, you're in a pretty good spot here if you are FIFA kill. Now it's just about holding your ground. 9 eliminations to his name. Still 19 players up in the lobby, including the trio here. 1 will fall in the back, though. It's, again, chaos that starts to spread from the back line. You do have to worry about the pinch as OEK will drop. But you can hear the frustration for the moment. Like, they just don't like maybe the spot they're in on the bridge.
Yeah. I think for them is though they'll be able to hold this left-hand side a little bit longer so they can keep trying to go for these picks here, but it looks like they're not finding as much angles as they want to, especially with that ledge just being a little bit higher than they need to. FIFA will have to jump over, hopefully try to line up any of these shots. You might see a couple players going for a late game buyback. Yep, there's a flare popping up as well. Good marks coming in from FIFA, getting shot from his left-hand side here. Can't overpeak this either because they have no self-res to work with. So if one FIFA goes down, they're really, it's either go for the res or hold these players back and hopefully not get aped here. But he's, oh, there it is. FIFA's out of ammo.
Yeah.
Only have an ISO.
He was low from the rooftop, and it really came down to, can you invest? Yeah, you can. Luckily, your teammate has support, and that's why you love him. But this is a tough spot to be in because you're hoping that other teams pull their attention away from you and start picking on some of those third-party gunfights. This is where you want FIFA Kill to be a third-party machine, and so far he's just trying to hunt players in the water.
Yeah, most of the players are going to be sitting in the water. The only cover across from them is going to be behind that bus, but it doesn't look like anyone's there. So it's all going to come down how much ammo each player has on the map because we're down to our top 4. Make that top 3. FIFA now switching the ISO in a 2v1v1. Trying to get those shots lined up. One player left to clean it up. FIFA, Oak, and AB Wiz about to take it. Oh, what? 23! Okay.
Wow. 23 eliminations, shooting fish in a barrel. Joewo goes down. Multiple players in the water fall quickly after that, starting off hot, setting the precedent early on. Last week, game 1, 27 eliminations from Lovey and company. This week, 23 from FIFA Kill. That is a ridiculously good way to get it started. And again, for a player that was absent last week, now back into the fray with the trio, Reflections, one of our top players on the top teams, just annihilates every squad in the water.
Yeah, dude, and that power position on the roof that then transitioned to the bridge. You couldn't ask for anything better. They set themselves early on. They understood the zone and where they needed to be. Despite being a player down, they were still